How you doing? I'm Andy Garrett. I'm with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission's Marine Mammal Pathobiology Lab. We're here in St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm going to show you a little bit about who we are and what we do today. So why don't you come on in? Alright, so as I mentioned, we're the Marine Mammal Pathobiology Lab, and we're located here in St. Petersburg, Florida. And we're one of 5 field stations around the state that handles dead and distressed manatees. This is where I work. I'm the research administrator here. I'm also the rescue coordinator for Florida. We have a field station in Jacksonville, Florida, Melbourne, DeQuesta, Port Charlotte. Our field station region covers from Manatee County, which is just south of Tampa Bay, all the way over to the Alabama-Florida border. And in this region, we're responsible for all of the dead and injured manatees that are called in. We receive calls from citizens through our 800 number that goes to our wildlife dispatchers. And once they receive the call from citizens, they contact the local biologist. In this case, it would be us, to respond to situations in those regions. So the first responder's mission is to go and check on the injured manatee and relay the information back to our biologist. So our biologist will then assess what they know from the citizen, what they know from the first responder, and oftentimes if the animal still sounds like it's in pretty bad shape, we'll send our biologist and rescue team to the scene. But sometimes we're able to assist the animal without actually having to set a net. In the case of some entanglements, we're actually able to snorkel up and cut gear free off the animal without having to catch it. Sometimes the animal is close enough to shore or actually stranded on shore that we're able to just use stretchers and small nets to pick them up. But oftentimes, and most of the time, we have to use our boat and do open water sets. Once our team gets to the scene, we'll go to the animal and assess the animal once again, decide whether we still feel like the manatee needs to be rescued. If it does, and we're using our capture boat, we'll begin to drive around the animal. The net comes off the back of the boat and we encircle the manatee with the net. And then once the net's completely encircled around the manatee, we'll begin to bring the net back into the boat. And the net actually has a lead line that sits on the bottom, keeps the manatee from going underneath, and a float line that keeps the manatee from going over the top. The net comes back onto the boat, and eventually we get to the point where we can wrap the lead and float line around the manatee so it's in the bag. Once the manatee's trapped in the bag, we'll pull the manatee on to the boat head first. We do that because we want to keep the manatee's head away from the water, which will decrease the chance it's going to beat its tail trying to swim. Once the manatee comes on the boat, we want to make sure it's on its belly. Manatees that are on their backs are very dangerous. We keep manatees on their bellies because their abdominal muscles are very strong, they're very flexible when they're on their backs. It's safer for the crew to keep the manatees on their bellies. Also, to avoid further injury to the animal, because oftentimes we're rescuing an animal that has injury, we keep the manatee as stable as possible. We use human weight to restrain the animal, and we will decrease the pressure on the animal as the animal calms down. Most rescued manatees will calm down once they're caught. So after the manatee's caught, it's on the boat. We try to keep it comfortable. Oftentimes that means keeping it wet. They are marine mammals, they breathe air, but we want to keep their skin wet. We try to keep them comfortable in the summertime. We maybe try to cover them with a thermal blanket. But once the manatee's on board, it's stabilized. We'll drive the boat back to the boat ramp, and from there we'll load it into a stretcher, pick the manatee up, and load it into a transport truck. Now, we rescue manatees for all sorts of reasons. We rescue manatees that have been injured by watercraft, that have been entangled in fishing gear, orphan calves, exposure to brevetoxins, cold stress, entrapments, and several other cases. So because of our location here in St. Petersburg, our closest rehab facility is Lowry Park Zoo. So a majority of our manatees rescued here on the central west coast go to Lowry Park Zoo. So once the manatee is brought into rehabilitation, the attending veterinarian will assess their injury or illness, and they'll treat the animal accordingly. So once the attending veterinarian at the zoo determines the manatee is ready to be released, we will assist them in a pre-release health assessment. The pre-release health assessment involves taking measurements, inserting microchips into the manatee's shoulder region, measuring the back fat to determine the health of the animal, helping with weights, and helping draw blood, as well as taking photos of any scars and sketching those scars. So when the animal is released, we can help monitor in the field. After the pre-release health assessment, biologists from the Marine Mammal Pathobiology Lab will work with Lowry Park Zoo staff to determine a release time and location. Releases are great opportunities for our staff to have one more chance to interact with the animal, as well as work with the staff that help rehab it and come together to get the animal back into the water. So thanks for taking the time with us here at the Marine Mammal Pathobiology Lab. If you're ever in St. Petersburg, come on by. Get you out of manatee rescue.